Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 p.m. and we are returning from recess to continue our board meeting for today. This is Se-Ron Fu, a board member. And so because we were away for some period of time, I am going to ask that Ms. Bruto call the roll to establish quorum for our purposes here.
Sure. Okay, Kasuga. Here. Cervantes. Fu.
Here.
Harp Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Riscate. Rogers.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Returning to Cervantes. Riscate.
Again.
Again, yes. So it looks like we are missing Cervantes and Riscate at this point.
I believe Ms. Riscate was able to unmute herself and
Oh, I'm sorry. I did hear you. So we are only missing Cervantes.
understood. So we do have a quorum established, and so and it is 1:01 p.m. So we're going to go ahead and start, and we'll ask staff that to just send a text message to Mr. Cervantes. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to, actually, before I turn it over to Dr. Harpsheet, I made a note for myself to say this. So we did receive a comment about materials for board item number 18. And so I want to share that item for item number 18 is available on the website in the agenda materials. It is page 150 of 177 of the PDF. If you're using Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, or Adobe PDF, you're able to look at the bookmark section and jump to that. It will be a slide that says validation of state and national examination programs with 3 presenters. This item is being taken up tomorrow. But I wanted to make sure I addressed the question about agenda items for number 18, materials for item 18. All right, with that, we are going to go to Dr. Harpsheets.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. Okay, the first item, this is the Licensure Committee report and possible action on committee recommendations. The first item, Ms. Chung will share with us projects which are on hold due to limited staffing resources. This is for information only. Ms. Chung?
Thank you, Dr. Harpsheet. Good afternoon, board members. This is to provide the board update regarding the projects that were on hold. Specifically, these were projects that were previously delegated to staff at the September 2019 Licensure Committee meeting. Due to limited staffing resources based from the right sizing of the budgets. So these 2 projects are being currently on hold until further notice. The first one would be the informational resources for supervisors. A very brief background on this was at the September, there's a typo there, it should be 2019 Licensure Committee meeting. The committee facilitated a stakeholders discussion and then to capture suggestions and feedback relating to what kind of informational resources would be helpful for supervisors in the following areas: regulations, frequently asked questions. So this committee has tasked staff to create content for the committee's review and consideration. This project will be put on hold until we're able to get our resources. And the second the second one would be the co-hosting of a stakeholder meeting on informing consumers regarding the respective roles of a licensed psychologist, licensed educational psychologist, and individuals holding a credential with a specialization in school psychology. The board voted to accept the licensure committee's recommendation for us, the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and the Commission on Teachers Credentialing to co-host a stakeholder meeting in the near future to solicit input on how to best inform consumers regarding the respective roles of these three professions. And this item is for informational purpose only.
Thank you, Ms. Chung. Mr. Fu, would you like us to have public comment after each of these items under number 8, or wait until we are through fully with number 8?
Let's take public comment after each item so that folks with comments can offer them in real time.
Okay, Madam Moderator, would you please open the discussion for public comment?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access their Q&A panel and submit their requests.
Okay, seeing no public comment, would you please close that panel?
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 8B, which is an update on waivers. Before I ask, this is again an informational item, before I ask Ms. Chung to share with us this information, I would like to just comment on something, a comment made earlier, that the board and the licensure committee are sensitive to the impact on potential licensees for applicants of COVID. And these waivers are in part to help that process. And as you'll see in items number 8, H and I, that there are extension requests that the licensure committee considers very seriously to try to help applicants in this process in the midst of the COVID limitations. So, Ms. Chung, could you tell us, give us some update on waivers? And again, this is informational only.
Absolutely, Dr. Harpsheets. There are two types of waivers. One is issued and maintained by the Department of Consumer Affairs, and the other one is the board-issued waivers. So if you're following along on the meeting material, you will see the differentiation of which waiver by the end of the at the end of each bullet, there will be a link. If you see DCA waiver and then with the number, that is the waiver that is issued by the department. And then if you see Board of Psychology waiver with the waiver number, that is the issue that provided by the board. I'm going to go ahead and provide a brief update on each of the waiver that is current right now. The first one is to extend time to satisfy examination requirements. This is a waiver issued by the department. This waiver provides a one-time 6-month extension for candidates to take or retake an examination from the expiration date of their application. So this waiver is being extended and is applicable to application that is scheduled to expire between February 1st, 2021 and April 2nd, 2021. The second waiver is an in-person face-to-face supervision. This is again a waiver issued by the department. This waiver allows the 1-hour face-to-face direct individual supervision to be conducted via a video or appropriate telehealth means since March 16, 2020 until February 28, 2021. We don't have any further updates regarding any extension of this waiver at this time yet, but we will be sure to post any updates on our website as soon as we have the information. The third one is a waiver issued by the board regarding supervised professional experience time limitation. The board has waived that if an applicant, their time limitation to accrue their professional experience hours beginning or after March 4th, 2020, if that's the end date after then, they will be provided an extension of 6 months from the end date of an unmodified time limitation period. So for example, if your end date of the either 60 or 30-month time limitation ends on March 4th, you will have an additional 6 months, and that would be factoring into the consideration when the hours are being reviewed. And the next waiver is regarding psychological assistance 72-month registration limitation. This is a waiver issued by the board, and it provides a one-time 6-month extension to psychological assistant registration who will be reaching the 72 months limitation set forth in regulations after March 4th, 2020. And then there's another waiver to allow extra time to complete continuing education requirements for license renewals. This is a waiver issued by the department. Currently, this waiver applies to psychologist license expires between January 1st, 2021 and February 28th, 2021. So this waiver allows licensees to complete all renewal-related continuing education requirements by June 15, 2021. And then the board also has more information regarding any other renewal-related CE questions, so you may refer there. And when we will also continue to monitor this waiver if there's any extension to this waiver, and we will be sure to provide that on the board's website as well. Another waiver issued by the department is the reinstatement of inactive or canceled licensure waiver. So this waiver temporarily waived the continuing education and fee requirements for an individual to restore a canceled psychologist license if they meet all the requirements specified on the waiver. So this waiver provided them restoration of license, which will be valid until July 1st, 2021, or when the state of emergency ceases to exist. And please note that this waiver only applies to psychologist license. And the last one that is regarding CAPLE for restoration of licenses. This is a waiver issued by the board. This is to be in line with the previously mentioned waiver for psychologists to restore their license, that they are not required to take the CAPLE at this time in order to reactivate if they qualify for the department waiver to reinstate their inactive or reinstate their canceled license for psychologists. That concludes the update on the waiver, Dr. Harvey.
Thank you, Ms. Chung. Okay, next we have the licensing report, and May will give us that. May, if you could just share with us any particular highlights that the board members and the public might need to be aware of. This is a very comprehensive report, and thank you very much for providing this to us. Any highlights would help us understand better what is happening regarding the licensing process.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Harpshaite. So for the licensing report, we do have an increase in the initial application for psychology licensure, and we suspect that that is due to the waiver to extend a one-time 6-month extension for exam eligibility. In addition to that, I also want to highlight attachment D, which is the examination statistic the data shows that from the year of 2020, December recorded the lowest passing rate for both total candidates and first timer when compared to previous months for complete, and that is the California Psychology Law and Ethics exam. The passing percentage for total candidates is approximately 68%, and first timer is approximately 66%, while the average passing percentage rate for both total candidates and first timer is approximately 76%. Note that the average of 76% does not include the December 2020 passing rate data. So that's about an 8 to 10% decrease for the passing rates for December when compared to the previous months in 2020. Unfortunately, we do not have an explanation for this decrease of the passing rates in December 2020. That was just an analysis of the complete statistic. And yeah, everything else on the report is just the usual report we normally provide at the licensure committee and board meeting.
Thank you very much. And I assume you'll continue to monitor those statistics to see if that trend on a lower passing rate continues. And we'll look forward to hearing from you in May on the status of that. Okay.
I just want to hand back to Stephanie to add on the report regarding application processing for the licensing unit.
I'm sorry, you kind of faded out. What did you want to add?
Oh, Stephanie will continue with the licensing report.
Oh, yes. Okay. So are we ready to move on to 8D, continuing education and renewals?
Oh, Dr. Harpsheets, should we go to potentially public comment to
yes.
on the previous two items?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes, we should. Madam Moderator, could you please open the comment box for public comment on waivers and on the licensing report, please?
All right, this is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel once again for public comment. It looks like we already do have one individual who has requested public comment. Colleen Kennedy. Colleen, I'm going to unmute your microphone now.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a licensing applicant, and my concern really has to do with communication. The Board of Psychology has not been doing their due diligence and communicating important and timely information with applicants, especially including the waiver, which has really impacted my ability to move forward with licensure. And so I've been communicating with both the board and the licensing staff at the board and with DCA. And DCA wrote me a letter recently just kind of talking about some of this communication that's been lacking. And so they said the board indicated that it should have sent you a courtesy notice through a batch process in the Breeze licensing system when your application expired. But due to an unknown technical glitch, the system did not correctly trigger a withdrawal notice for your application, resulting in the notice to you not issuing. So I didn't realize that my application had actually expired in the middle of the pandemic. And then DCA went on to say that board staff then generated a report listing the applicants impacted by the waiver and notified them via email. Unfortunately, due to another technical error, you are not listed on the report. And then they went on to say the board also used this report to inform ASPTB of the applicants with extended testing eligibility, but board staff were not alerted to send you the email nor inform ASPTB about your extended eligibility. And these mistakes were just kind of brushed off as sort of an inconvenience and poor customer service. But what I'd really like the board to recognize is that they have a responsibility to your applicants. And when you're not doing your job, it results in psychologists not being able to move forward with their career, which leads to unemployment and an ability for us to be able to support our families. And it prevents well-trained clinicians from being able to get out into the field and really start helping with the mental health crisis stemming from the pandemic. So my question to you guys is really, where is that oversight coming from? Because waivers are great in theory, but if you're not allowing your applicants to know that they exist, that they really aren't helpful at all. So where's that oversight, I guess, is my question to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. And that is an important question that you ask, and we will be paying attention to what you have said and appreciate your being here to share that. Dr. Winkleman, are you next?
Oh, one moment while I get her microphone unmuted. Dr. Winkleman, I am unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, Elizabeth Winkleman, again from the California Psychological Association. And again, thanks for the opportunity to comment. To follow up on Dr. Kennedy's comment, we have heard from quite a few psychologist members who are having difficulty getting responses from the board, and have tried to contact you by the staff by email and by phone. So just to make you aware of that too, that has been a problem for some people, especially applicants or potential applicants. I also wanted to ask a question about the in-person face-to-face supervision. I know it is a DCA waiver issued by the DCA, but it's going to be expiring in 10 days. And I know that many, if not most or almost all of the current trainees, because of the coronavirus, are still getting their supervision by HIPAA compliant video, and just wondering, is there any timeline as to a couple things? Is there any timeline as to when an update or an extension would come out? Because, you know, it's only 10 days away. And also, is there a formal request process that perhaps the Board of Psychology submits to the DCA about the need for that? Would be two. And then third, and maybe this is not for this item, but wondering if it's possible to just change that requirement to be able to be satisfied by HIPAA compliant video going forward, even when the coronavirus pandemic is over. I think the statute says face-to-face, which could be potentially interpreted as either in person or via video.
All right, this is the moderator, and we'll move on to our next individual as requested public comment, Melody Schaefer. And just as a reminder, we will be going in the order that comments are received. So please wait your turn while we get through all the comments. Melody, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. I thought I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the waiver for face-to-face supervision expires the end of November. Is that correct? Meaning face-to-face supervision online, obviously, but is that what was said?
Dr. Schaefer, we'll answer that question upon the conclusion of public comment. So we've taken note of that question.
Okay. Well, the question, okay, then I will say this. If that is the case, because I think that's what I heard you report, which I'm just asking for an answer of clarification, then that would mean that in 1 week that expires. That doesn't give much time for psychologists such as myself that supervise trainees to be prepared. So I'd appreciate to hearing if that's correct what I thought I heard. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Dr. Belgrad. I'll be unmuting your microphone now.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Dr. Belgrad, and I had a question comment regarding the SIPLI. So I noticed and was told by many psychologists who took the SIPLI the last 3 months of 2020, who missed it by 1 point, meaning that they failed it by 1 point, were notified in January, I think it was around January 12th, that there was a readjustment. of 1 point, and then they passed. And my question was it because the test was determined as being too difficult and that's why the adjustment was made, or is it because of the pandemic and we need to get more licensed clinicians out there? And what are the chances that this will repeat, meaning that this will happen the next cycle around for people who took the test in January, February, or March?
All right, this is the moderator. I believe that was our last individual who has requested public comment.
This is Dr. Harbsheets. Yes, if you could please close the comment box. And I would like to ask Ms. Chung if she would like to comment regarding the most recent question on the change in scoring and anything else about communication that has been brought up. Oh, and also the waiver, the expiration date of the waiver.
Thank you, Dr. Harbsheet. I can respond to the waiver question. The in-person face-to-face supervision by the waiver issued by the DCA will expire this month and on February 28th, 2021. But we have been in constant communication with the department. If we have learned of any updates, we will be notify our public as soon as we can.
Hi, this is, I'm sorry, this is Jason Glasspiegel. I was gonna speak to the exam question.
Thank you. Are you there, Jason?
I am. I'm just trying to make sure I am providing the right details.
This is a moderator. Real quick, I just want to quickly interrupt. If we can have individuals please mute their microphones when they're not speaking. We are getting a little bit of feedback, so please be mindful of muting your mic. Thank you.
Second thought, I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Sorik.
Just kind of to add a little bit of context to the exam passage rates, as just a sense of routine, the board staff always provides the exam passage rates for each month for the national exam and for the law and ethics exam as part of our meeting materials. Between board meetings, if there is an anomaly or if there's an extreme change in the score that rises to the level of concern for the Office of Professional Examination Services, who does our occupational analysis, which basically says you have a legally defensible examination or not. If the passage rate goes down to a level that is of concern, that is brought to the attention of board staff, and Ms. Snyder, Mr. Glasspiegel, Mr. Burke, and myself would be all involved in that discussion, along with probably Ms. Chung, because it impacts applicants as well. Once in my 7-year time with the board, we've had that discussion, and I think what the issue was at the time was we had a lot of new licensees that were part of the examination creation for that particular version of the exam, which explained, and at the time it was a much lower passage rate, but with these passage rates, it's still within, I think, what OPES considers a normal and defensible passage rate. So if that were to ever change, we would be advised to have a sit-down meeting with OPS, and we would look at what caused the significant change. So that is certainly something that is always on our radar, but we will be in constant communication with them. I just wanted to add that little bit of context.
Thank you, Ms. Sorg. Okay. I think we can move on to the continuing education and renewals report.
Really quick before we do, this is
Sure.
Ms. Cervantes. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the things we've talked about so far? Is this an appropriate time? I don't want to mess up our flow.
Yes,
but-
please. Yes, please. And I see Mr. Fu also has a question.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So just with regards to the items we've discussed so far and the issue of the waivers, I don't have a sense, and this may be something that maybe we can discuss in May, but I don't have a sense of the impact of the waivers on our applicant pool, and if it's helpful or if it's not helpful because maybe the waiver isn't hitting on something that is important right now to the folks applying for licensing. And so so this brings me to another point, which is that I don't have a sense of the impact of the pandemic on the community of people that we license, and if there are barriers in the community right now towards getting a license. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because to the extent that the mental health crisis is in the news and in elevated public awareness, there's also an elevated awareness in the Capitol. And as we're navigating various legislative, statutory language, these themes come up, and I would like some kind of analysis about that so that we can better speak to the impact of the pandemic on our work of licensing psychologists in California, and where we might need to adjust policy to help or help and not create more barriers.
Thank you, Ms. Cervantes. I think you'll see a little bit more about how the waivers have helped the people in the process of getting licensed when we talk about item H and I, the exceptions that are being made. And, you know, absolutely what you're pointing out about the mental health pandemic, I think we originally expected something at the beginning of the COVID shutdown that didn't necessarily materialize, but is definitely materializing now, that it is much more difficult. And it's my understanding from being part of the professional community, but also from looking at the requests for waivers during the licensing process, that they are helpful and they are keeping people out there providing mental health services. So you might want to ask some more questions after you hear that the information in items H and I. Mr. Fu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harpsheets. On a related point to what Ms. Cervantes said, after items H and I, if Ms. Sorg, you can follow up with Ms. Cervantes with regard to the interest in how the waivers are impacting the population, and perhaps refine that that question so that we can have a sense of information on that front. That would be greatly appreciated. And then secondly, Ms. Chung, I'm really sensitive to the comments I heard in public comment about response times and the impact on applicants who are trying to move forward in their licensure process, and with the circumstances of the pandemic may not necessarily be receiving as much information or based on that DCA letter that was shared with us. So could you please share with us some of the actions that might have been taken or are being taken in response to the response times?
Thank you, Mr. Fu. Yes, I can provide some information regarding what actions that we have been taken or will be planning to do so in the future as well. So I just want to say that we always strive to provide excellent customer service to the public and provide any necessary assistance to help our applicants navigating through the licensure process. So as reported in previous board meetings, the board has continued its effort in right-sizing the budget to get out of the structural deficit. So due to the budget impact, we are currently relying on 4 full-time licensing analysts to managing the workload as provided in our licensing report in attachment B. So you could see that the volume is about 2,700 applications and notification in a 12-month period. So we have anticipating an increase lengthened processing timeframes due to the budgetary impacts. So we did revise the application processing timeframes regarding initial licensure and registration, and posted these timeframes on the board's website to provide more information to applicants, as we know that they're very anxious in knowing if their application is going to be processed or if any more information is needed. So this information is updated on a monthly basis, which tell them what document or which application or notifications that we are processing on what date. While balancing the very high volume of application-related workload, we also received a very large amount of incoming inquiries relating to application statuses. So considering that many applicants are eager to move forward with the process, so we did prioritize the review and processing on applications. So we hope to help them advance to the next step of the licensure process as soon as possible. So this is what we have been doing. And even though we are operating with a reduced number of staff, we also want to make enhancement to enhance our communication with our applicants. So we plan to improve the functionality of the BREEZE system, which will enable applicants to look at their application status or any deficiencies regarding their application when they log into their profile on BREEZE. And we're also looking into the possibility to expand the online and electronic capacity for the application process. So these are some of the actions that we have taken and are planning to take in the future as well. Thank you, Mr. Fu.
Ms. Chung, thank you. I know in the years I've worked with you, I know how empathetic you are and professional, and certainly what you're hearing and feedback from the public, I know doesn't meet your own expectations from my experience working with you, and just appreciate that the steps you have taken and are continuing to take to make sure we're responsive.
Thank you.
This is Julie Nystrom. Question, do you know when the BREEZE extended functionality will be up and running?
So that process is there's multi-steps in there. So we are hoping to have some time this year. We are hoping that by summer, I don't want to pinpoint at a time because functionality update, there will be unforeseen technical difficulties, but we are hoping to have something by summer.
Thank you.
No problem.
Dr. Phillips, I know you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I do have one question, and I kind of reiterates what has been said by several of the members of the public. Can we get any indication from DCA at all whether they're intending to extend the time relative to the face-to-face supervision requirement? Because I mean, if we're just going to kind of wait, there's going to be clinics all over the place with interns and psychological assistants and registered psychologists that are going to be caught unawares at the last minute that this situation has changed. So I think we should either be warning them that the 28th is a drop dead date, or alternatively, I think we should be pressing to see if DCA is going to make an alteration. I don't know if that's possible, but it certainly seems important, given that we're now on the 18th and the deadline runs in another 10 days.
I wonder with what Dr. Winkleman pointed out about can the wording face-to-face in the regulation be interpreted not just in person, but through HIPAA compliant video. Mr. McGuire, could you respond to that?
Specifically on the HIPAA compliance issue, or on the extending it via DCA?
No, that, if the regulation says the 1 hour of face-to-face supervision being required, just in general, can we interpret that wording face-to-face be not just in person, but can also, through use of HIPAA compliant video, be considered face-to-face?
I see. You're talking about in absence of the current waiver.
Yes.
Okay, and I would just say on the first point, because they tie in together, but on the waiver point, from my experience, because I'm a DCA employee, I've seen that DCA executive has been very diligent about checking in with boards, staff. They usually don't give a ton of lead time, but they give enough lead time for when one of these waivers is expiring for us to kind of determine whether we recommend that they extend it. And if they haven't done so, I'd be happy to run it up the chain on my end, and I'm sure Antoinette could assist me. And so we'll certainly do that. That as to the second part of the question, whether we can interpret the regs differently, I mean, I think I don't want to give you an answer here today in this forum. I'd like to do a little more research on it and try to figure that out, but we can certainly circle back if necessary on that.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I know that's a question that's been brought up in the past. And yes, we would appreciate knowing your opinion on that. I would like to just reiterate, I think Ms. Chung is the focus on the licensing staff to process applications as expeditiously as possible, and recognizing that there are a lot of questions. So their efforts on getting the Breeze system operating so that people can look online to see the status versus having to contact the licensing staff. So the staff is then freed up to continue the application process as quickly as possible. So I think that was, I really appreciate that Ms. Chung and her staff have identified that need. I don't see any other hands raised, so let's move on to item 8D, Continuing Education and Renewals Report. Ms. McCracken, is there anything you would like to point out in that report to us?
Yes, I wanted to highlight the CE audits. The CE audits for October, November, and December 2019 concluded on February 14th, and the audits for January, February, March, April 2020 will be sent out by the end of this month. And then I would also like to congratulate the board members who passed their CE audits, Dr. Phillips, Dr. Kasuga, Dr. Tate, Dr. Rogers, and Dr. Harpsheets. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's open the box for public comment on this item.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that icon with a question mark in a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, it looks like we do have a request for comment from Melody Schrafer. Melody, I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Just to follow up to my question earlier, since I heard information to now that I may respond to. If I don't hear soon enough, then basically as a psychologist, I'm not going to be out of compliance with the issue of not being allowed to do face-to-face supervision vis-a-vis virtual conduction of such. I would have to tell my trainees they can't see patients and get them prepared this week. I would have to figure out what to do with a lot of patients, consumers, if you will, and in desperate need of treatment. So this is a critical issue. This is a consumer safety and care issue. And I cannot put myself at risk seeing my intern face-to-face, for instance, and neither do I think anyone's suggesting that, but that's what would have to happen in order to circumvent this. So I'd like to underscore the critical nature of this to patients, meaning consumers, to the trainees, and if they have to terminate because of it, because I can't put myself in a position of going against board regulations and jeopardize my license. But it puts me in a quandary because now there's a patient care issue. So I implore the board to please, or the DCA to please put this as a priority, because it will affect an awful lot of people very quickly, and there has to be enough time to make plans for where to send the patients if we can't treat them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schrafer. I hope that you can feel reassured that this is a priority, and we hear from our legal counsel too that he is willing to be involved in working to either get this extended or identify information and get information sent out ASAP. Definitely a priority, we understand. Okay. I don't see any other comment. So if we could please move on to item 8E, the examination report. And Ms. Snyder, on the 8E1 subject matter expert, if you could share with us any highlights we should be aware of regarding the demographic data on the subject matter experts.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Dr. Harpsheets. I think Ms. Nystrom and I had comment.
Oh, I didn't see the hands up. Sorry.
No, apologies. I just apologies for interrupting.
No problem. I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Yes, Ms. Nystrom, please.
Oh, yes. So my question, and Ms. McCarthy, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but it shows that the current pass-fail rate for the CE audit is 64% for passing. Is that a low number, or is that sort of an average number?
Hi, sorry. So the 64%, it's just because there are a couple pending, so that's not the actual number. But it seems to be going on track of, I think it's usually above 80%. It's just because of the couple audits pending.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Fu.
Thank you, Dr. Harpsheets. Just to follow on the point about the extension of the waivers, it would behoove, I think, the powers that be to just be realistic about where we are in the pandemic, where the vaccination rates are. And I can't imagine why we're doing this on such a limited basis, why we couldn't make a request for this waiver to be extended either for the duration of the pandemic or per the governor's emergency declaration, or to at least get it through the summer or even autumn. I think anyone who's been following what is being shared by various public health agencies, including our own, it's clear that February 28th is, whenever that was set, was not going to be sufficient. So I think this is a larger question of whether, are the departments talking and following and listening to what CDPH is saying, and measuring against that, rather than these extensions that are occurring in a vacuum and not consistent with the public health and medical advice that we've received from our own sister agency at CDPH. So that's just my comment on that front.
Thank you. I see Dr. Phillips, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you very much. I won't prolong this any longer, but I do think that there has been an attitude, and I think it comes from above DCA, that any waiver should be, the timing on any waiver should be very incremental. I don't know that that's the best approach to it, but that seems to be the tenor of what's going on. So I think DCA is kind of acting within the ambit of what the overall policy may be of other parts of the administration. So I don't think we can hang this around DCA's neck either. I think this is has been a choice made by the powers that be at much higher up the food chain.
Thank you for that insight. Ms. Nystrom, your hand is up. Would you like to make another comment or ask another question?
No, sorry, I just didn't take it down. Thank you.
Okay, sure. And Mr. Fu, your hand is up too. Would you like to add something?
No, that was my mistake. Apologies.
Okay. Ms. Snyder, could you share with us highlights of your report on subject matter experts? I think she's trying to speak. I could see, but I don't hear her. Madam Moderator, can you tell what is happening there?
This is the moderator. I see that she is unmuted. However, like you, I am not hearing any audio. Ms. Snyder, what we might want to do is try to switch your audio over to your phone. We'll get instructions up on the screen in just a second, but if you go up to audio and video, thank you. If you go up to audio and video at the top of your WebEx screen and click switch audio and then follow the instructions to call in, you should be able to connect your audio through your phone.
Dr. Harpchis, while Snyder does.
Yeah, why don't we go on to item F to wait until she's able to connect with us. And I can speak to item F. That would be on page, hold on, let me back up a second. Sorry. I think that might be in the hand carry. Item F might be in the hand carry. And that is, let me find it. Okay, it's, yes, it's in our hand carry, and it talks about, we had a public member comment about the risks of taking the law and ethics exam in person. And so we asked Dr. Montes and her staff to look into the feasibility of online administrations. And what you have in the packet is their report with the, they looked at all the pluses and also the possible consequences, and their recommendation is that there were both testing, legal, and security issues that could be problematic, so that at this point, online administration or remote proctoring should not be used. So this is for informational purposes only, but we can open it up, that issue, to public comment, please.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment on this item. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. While we're waiting for members of the public to indicate if they would like to make a comment, I would like to do a quick mic check with Lavinia Snyder. Lavinia, because you're connected on your phone, you will need to control your mute and unmute button on your computer session. Currently, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. You're a little faint. You may want to either turn up the audio on your phone or put your phone a little bit closer to your face.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but it is a little faint. I'm not sure if you're able to turn it up at all.
It's already to the max.
Okay, that sounds a little better, so I think that'll work.
Okay, so we're waiting for public comment on the idea of remote administration or proctoring of the law and ethics exam, and the recommendation not to move forward because of security testing and legal concerns.
At this time, it looks like there are no comments. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
Please do. And let's then go back to Ms. Snyder to talk about any highlights you have for us on the subject matter expert information.
Just that overall, the implementation of the standard SME applications that the board implemented back in 2017 streamlined the vetting process as well as provide the board with demographic information for our experts. So back in 2019 and 2020, we had 8 workshops. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to cancel 2 workshops, one in March and in April. The linkage study that we were supposed to have in June was repurposed to CPLE passing score workshop. This was a recommendation made by OPS so that we can continue to have an exam version in July. So allowing exam continuity for our candidates at the time of the pandemic. So so with the workshop cancellation and the reduction of participants from 10 to 6, we only had a total of 55 SMEs as opposed to our usual 80% per year, 80 SMEs per year. So, and the data just shows you what we collected in fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Does anyone have questions on the data?
Okay, let's open the comment box, please, on this item. On subject
Sorry,
matter.
I have a question. Is that
sure?
Sorry, folks. I have I can't find sometimes the buttons to press to raise my hand or unmute myself.
That's okay.
So sorry for the delay.
Okay.
This is page 40 of our combined packet. There is a line graph that shows SME knowledge in each subject matter area. I was curious if these were specific areas that we sought SMEs for, or is this like something that they self-report? And then a follow-up question is this diverse enough, or is there more areas that that there's a need for that are not in this mix here that we're looking at?
Ms. Snyder, could you respond?
Okay, sure. Okay, so when we select candidates, it's a random selection. So we send out a mass email to 1,500 licensees. And those that report back to us that say that, hey, we're interested in participating. And at that point, an application is sent to them, and they fill out the application and they self-report what areas their areas of expertise, I guess.
So this information in the graph on page 40, then, to answer Ms. Cervantes' question, is reflection of that self-report.
Yes.
And then the items that are selected, the areas, is that, sounds her question was also, is this a broad enough selection of areas? And maybe you could share with her how those areas were determined, or are there more that are not reflected here?
Well, the areas where what the board had wanted when they initiated the application, these were the demographics that they had wanted to identify and to report to the board. So,
okay. So this is a reflection of the board's request.
Yes.
Okay. Does that help, Ms. Cervantes?
Yes, thank you. So do we know if there are needs in other specialties, or these were identified because that is where the need is?
I mean, we can certainly add different areas to the list that we already have, but when they initially made the application, or they implemented the application, these were the needs that they identified. So, but if you have others, we can certainly add that to the application.
Thank you. I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So public comments. Time.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow them time to access that Q&A panel.
So seeing no public comment, please close the Q&A panel.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. Again, Ms. Snyder, could you share with us any highlights you think we should be aware of in item 8E2 on the examination candidate statistics?
Sure. Okay, so just like everything else, during the pandemic, the Pearson VUE and Psychological Services Inc., or PSI exam sites experienced, had to adjust administration of each of the exam based on CDC and WHO guidelines. So, however, despite the setbacks they had with shutdowns and cancellations and scheduling and rescheduling, both Pearson VUE and PSI continue to schedule exams. So the collected data that was provided should show that for for 2020, that we continue to approve applications, and the number of exams taken that applicants continued to schedule despite the pandemic. So I have data for the EPPP and the CPLEE. If you look at the totals for the EPPP, we had 1,105 application approvals, and number of exams taken, we had 1,354. For the CPLEE, number of approved applications, 662. Number of exams taken, we had 1,007 candidates that took the exam.
Okay. Please open, do we have any questions from board members?
This is Ms. Cervantes again. On this item, am I understanding correctly that because of the strict safety protocols, there are individuals who do not have access to the exam right now, who are eligible and do not have access because of the reduced capacity? Did I read that right? Or
No,
did I
I mean,
understand it correctly?
I mean, regardless of the reduced capacity, they can still schedule, but they can't usually, like for instance, if they tried to schedule in March and April during the shutdown, they had to adjust and schedule at a date when there's an availability. So I mean, they can still schedule exams. It's just that because of the reduced capacity, they might not have the available date that they need, and that they would have to schedule further out.
Okay. And then on the next page, on the combined packet, it's 45, where we have the comparison of approved candidates versus exam candidates for one calendar year, which I imagine is, what is that, 2020?
This is for 2020, yes.
It would be great to have a side-by-side comparison of what those numbers were for those months in 2019. And then it starts to paint a picture of the effect of the pandemic on the license applicant pool and how things are moving along, or maybe they're not. I don't know, but I don't have that information. So I just wanted to point that opportunity out because I think it'd be helpful to look at that at some point.
Sure. Certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we please open the comment box?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of the WebEx screen. It looks like we do have one individual who's requested public comment, Melody Schrafer. Melody, I'll be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Just for clarity's sake, in terms of the Kipley and any other tests that we're addressing at this point, if they're not going to be given virtually, so to speak, because of the concerns that you outlined in terms of ethical and legal issues, I assume there's then an implication that would be done in person. And if that is the case, is there consideration by the board on risk factors due to COVID of travel to such places, if that is what you were going to do, and to be physically and personally located with whoever is going to administer a proctor? Thank you.
All right, we'll be moving on to our next individual's requested public comment, Camille De Leonardis. Camille, I'm muting your microphone now.
Hi, good afternoon. My question or comment was related to the figures that were provided with the number of applicants and the number of people that were available or able to book the test. Do you know if those applicants took the test in California? As I know a number of colleagues that have had to go out of state to take the EPPP just because there are no dates available for months in California unless you want to take the EPPP last minute.
Ms. Snyder, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. Unfortunately, we don't. Are you talking about the EPPP or the CPLE or the CPLE? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, for the EPPP.
So the EPPP, I currently don't have data as far as those applicants that took it. So the data I only have is the information that we've gathered through our system. I mean, I can certainly contact ASPPB and figure out who those candidates are, but right now I don't have that data available.
So what you've reported for us is this is the number of California applicants who are approved to take the EPPP, and this is the number who took the EPPP. But what you don't have is, did they take it in California or did they have to travel out of state? You don't have that.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other public comments. So, and we have done item 8F already. Let's move on to 8G. And that is on page, that's a hand carry item, actually. And at the July board meeting, when we were addressing extension requests, Dr. Phillips asked us to consider how much supporting information we would be providing out of respect for these requests, the people who are making these requests and their confidentiality. So at the January 2021 Licensure Committee meeting, we appreciated that request and recognized that, yes, there's a significant amount of information that doesn't appear necessary for the board to consider the recommendations that the Licensure Committee makes as in response to these requests. And we are asking the board to consider the idea that in the board packets, the extension request, which might come in a letter or an email, be included, and any letters of support with appropriate redactions for confidentiality purposes, versus including what you see in your document in the hand carry. We were providing verification of experience, medical record, decrees, unofficial transcripts, and that information did not feel necessary. So I would like to open the discussion to ask the board to consider the Licensure Committee's recommendation that we include in subsequent meetings the extension request itself and any letters of support, all with appropriate redactions.
So moved. This is Mr. Fu.
Okay. Any discussion by board members? Dr. Phillips.
Yeah, and I do think it's best if we keep the amount of information to a minimum to protect the confidentiality of the petitioners, or I guess it's petitioners. However, I found when I was reading a few of these that I could not necessarily understand the basis for the recommendation. So I think there's a little bit of information loss.
Mm-hmm.
I personally may have more questions about particular decisions,
mm-hmm.
not having the benefit of the full package, but I would rather maintain the confidentiality. So I will second Mr. Fu's motion.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions from board members? I see none. Could we please open the Q&A box to public comments, questions?
All right, this is a moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel. All right, this is a moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please.
All right, it's closed.
Okay, is there any other comments, questions from board members before we take a vote? I see none. Ms. Proto, could you please call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
And Tate.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We will move on to item 8H. And these are extension requests for the 72-month registration period. Okay. PSB number 1 is requesting a 12-month extension. This is a first-time examinee who reports having some challenges in scheduling due to the pandemic. This person was granted the 6-month waiver, and the licensure committee, and the person is approved to take the exam, or was approved on November 20th, has until May 7th of 2021, and the licensure committee is recommending to the board to approve the additional 6 months beyond the waiver. Are there any questions, comments about this one? Okay.
So move to adopt the committee's recommendation.
I second Dr. Harpsheets. And Ms. Proto, can you please call for the vote?
I think there's public comment, Dr. Harpsheets.
Oh, right. On each of these individually?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment on this motion. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time access to that Q&A panel. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. I see no further questions. Ms. Proto, please, could you call for the vote?
Thank you. Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harpsheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. PSB number 2 has requested a 24-month extension. PSB 2 has a total of 4 psychological assistant registrations, has not applied for licensure at this time. The committee had a concern that there was possibly some unlicensed practice that may be happening. This person has not yet taken the EPPP, and the other concern was that this person may be looking at a psychological assistant position as not a stepping stone towards licensure, but as a career. And we are recommending to the board that that we deny the 18-month extension. They're requesting 24. They got the 6-month waiver automatically, and that we deny the additional 18 months. Are there any questions, comments by board members?
I move to adopt the recommendation.
I second it. Open for public comment, please.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow them time to access that Q&A panel. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Ms. Proto, could you please call the roll for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harpsheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate? Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
PSB 3 has requested a total of 8 months extension in order to get the hours in. She was granted 6 months through the waiver, and she has been approved to take the exam on, she was approved on June 16th of last year, has not taken it yet. PSB number 3 has applied in plenty of time in order to provide for continuity of care with her or his or her clients. And we recommend that the board approve the 2 additional months this applicant has requested. Any comments from board members? I will make the motion to, can I do that as the chairperson of this committee? Move that the board accept this?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised or microphones open. Could you please open for public comment?
All right, this is the moderator. And once again, we have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Sure. Can I just confirm who seconded the motion?
Tate. Oh,
thank you.
Tate.
Okay. Sir, Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. PSB 6. We're on 6, right? I'm just losing sight here. One second. I think that was number 4. So we are on PSB number 5. Is that correct? This PSB number 5 has requested total of 8 months, 6 months already through the waiver, and has taken the EPPP 3 times. Their time frame is set to expire on April 7th of this year. And again, this person is requesting time in plenty of time to allow for transfer of patients if that becomes necessary. The committee is asking the board to agree with our recommendation to approve 2 months.
I move to adopt the committee's recommendation.
And I second. I think Ms. Chung is raising her hand. Are you raising your hand, Ms. Chung, because I skipped number 4?
I also, yes, and I also want to make a clarification, if I may, for PSB 5, since we have already introduced that.
Okay.
Actually, thank you. So PSB number 5 is actually requesting an 8-month extension total. So because the expiration is in the future for now, so in case the board is not voting to approve this 8 month, this PSB will also be granted the 6 month should the board waiver still exist. I just want to add that information. Thank you, Dr. Hoffy.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Any comments on or discussion on PSB number 5's request and the motion to approve the additional 2 months beyond the 6-month waiver?
Hi, this is Dr. Phillips. I'm a little confused as to why we're granting this. I mean, they have their hours. It's not like they're having much success passing the exam.
Right, right. This person has taken it 3 times. And I think it's, as Ms. Chung has pointed out, that this is sort of a just in case for this person to grant them that additional 2 months.
So effectively, we're just granting them 2 months.
Yes, just 2 months.
Okay. I'm not confused any longer.
Okay, okay. Okay, public comment.
All right, this is the moderator. Once again, at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, or motion, I apologize. Please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
And Ms. Proto, can you call for the vote?
Thank you. Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We'll go back to PSB number 4. PSB number 4 has taken the exam 3 times in 2013 and twice in 2015. This person requested a total of 12 months. 6 months are partially granted under the board's waiver, and those expired on December 8th of 2020. There's been no additional exam attempt since 2015. The licensure committee is recommending that we deny the request for the additional 6 months beyond the automatic waiver. Any questions by board members? Would someone like to make a motion?
This is Julie Nystrom, and I will make a motion to adopt the board's or the committee's recommendation.
I second. This is Dr. Kasuga.
I just had a question.
Yes.
If this person's been waiting, her 6 months has already gone past, correct?
Yes, expired on December 8th.
So right now, if he or she is seeing a patient,
Yes,
they're engaging in unlicensed practice.
yes.
Okay. Yes, it's concerning.
It is concerning. We discussed this also at the meeting, and Ms. Chung, could you comment on how board staff is handling these situations? Because we recognize that there's such a lag time from when people make these requests and the board is actually able to vote on them.
Yes, Dr. Harjeet. So we made it clear that a pending extension request, if the is not allowing them to continuing to perform psychological functions for a pending request, if their registration has expired while waiting for the review.
So you're notifying them that they need to stop practicing if their request hasn't been approved at the time of the expiration. And beyond that, it then becomes up to them and their supervisors to recognize that and take appropriate action, correct?
Correct. Yes, and we always remind them to have ample time to transition clients should we know that it will take longer for the extension request process to happen.
Okay. Dr. Phillips, is that helpful, or would you like to say more about that concern?
No, that's very helpful. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay. Okay. Public comment, please.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
And Ms. Proto, please call for the vote.
Kasuga,
Hey, sorry.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Fu,
Aye.
Harb Sheets,
Aye.
Nystrom,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Riscate,
Aye.
Rogers,
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. PSB 6 has requested a total of 9 to 12 months. 6 months were partially granted under the board's waiver. Those 6 months expired on December 17th of 2020. This person has taken the exam twice, has received various accommodations, and has not yet passed the exam. The committee felt that the petitioner should focus on preparing for the exam and is recommending that the request of the additional 3 to 6 months be denied.
I move we approve the recommendation.
You do approve the recommendation?
I said I move that we approve the recommendation.
I second it. I don't see any board hands raised. Public comment, please.
This is the moderator. We have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
And Ms. Proto, please call for the vote.
Yes. Kasuga,
Aye.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Fu,
Aye.
Harb Sheets,
Aye.
Nystrom,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Riscate,
Aye.
Rogers,
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. PSB number 7 has requested a total of 12 months, 6 months of which were partially granted under the board's waiver, and those expire on March 20th, 2021. This person has taken maternity and parental leave during this time, and the committee is recommending that we approve the additional 6 months beyond the 6-month waiver. This person is on track to prepare for taking the examination based on the information provided. Any comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved, Mr. Fu.
Okay. Dr. Phillips?
I will second the motion, but I'm a little confused. This person has 9,600 hours of postdoc hours.
I know it was a lot.
There's something It seems like there's something wrong with the system.
You wonder how the person can do that. Ms. Chung, can you comment on that?
Yes, may I look into some info and then circle back on this?
Sure.
Thank you.
And these are between 2015 and 2020. So if you think a normal work year, it's just in general would be 2,080 work hours. That person's working pretty full time in those 5 years, or almost 5. So yes, it will be interesting to know. So we will hear. Would you prefer to, well, these hours have been documented. Is there anyone who has any objection to, well, we'll have public comment and then see if we've got information. Could you please open it for public comment?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. All right, it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. Does anyone have any objection to voting on this motion prior to the information regarding those hours? I don't see any hands raised. So, Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Abstain.
Okay. Riscate? Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
And once more, Riscate?
Aye.
Okay, so 1 abstention.
Okay. PSB number 8 has requested a total of 24 months. 6 months are partially granted under the board's waiver. They have applied to take the exam and been approved. Were approved to take it on August 28th, 2020. As of yet, no attempt has been made. The committee felt that an 18-month extension, which is 24 minus the 6 under the waiver, was too long, but are comfortable granting an additional 3 months. The current waiver actually expires on April 11th of this year. So that would be an initial 3 months beyond that. Any questions by board members? Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to adopt the committee's recommendation. This is Nystrom.
Mr. Fu will second.
Okay. I don't see hands raised. So public comment, please.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow them time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay, Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, PSB number 9, it seems this is a little after the fact. This person was requesting 12 months. 6 months were partially granted under the waiver. This person's request was written in June of 2020. This person passed the EPPP in October and the CAPLE in December of 2020. And their actual registration expires in May. So the committee recommended that we approve the 6 months, and it seems almost after the fact, but since it was requested and we discussed it, we were making the recommendation that that be done. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Fu, so moved.
Second?
Ms. Nystrom will second.
Okay. I see no hands raised for comment. Could we open the box for public comment?
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow them time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Great. The Q&A panel is now closed.
And Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, PSY, these are extensions to the 30-month limitation to accrue postdoctoral hours. PSY 1 has requested 10 months. This person had difficulty finding a supervisor and described various attempts to find someone and has taken and not passed the EPPP 3 times. The committee is recommending that we approve those 10 months. Any discussion? Ms. Chung, did you want to add to that?
Sorry, I was just trying to circle back regarding
Sure.
AI PSV number 7.
Yes.
So just want to share that if it's okay.
Okay, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So yes, it's confirmed that it was reported that amount of hours, but only 3,000 accredited to us licensure. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Dr. Phillips, did you have any more questions about that?
No, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so PSY 1, again, described various difficulties finding a supervisor, has taken EPPP and not passed 3 times. Requests 10 months extension, and the committee is recommending that we approve that.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Fu.
Okay. Any comments? I'm looking for board hands. Okay, could we please open the public comment box?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
The Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay, I see no more hands. Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Riscate,
Aye.
Rogers,
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. PSY number 2, while accruing hours worked full-time as a school psychologist, clarified that she was not using her work hours as part of her licensing hours, and is requesting an additional 6 months to accrue the postdoctoral hours. The committee is recommending that we approve those. Are there any questions?
To adopt the committee's recommendation?
Yeah.
And seconded by Mr. Fu.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, who made the motion?
Ms. Nystrom.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Could we open for public comment, please?
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. At this time, there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Great. The Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Riscate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, PSY number 3 was in what she thought was a KPIC internship and collecting hours, and some hours into it recognized that it was not in fact KPIC, and she then applied to be a registered psychologist, and so had some delay in collecting hours. There was a maternity leave during that time also, and is requesting 18 months extension. And the committee is recommending to the board that we approve that 18-month extension request. Any questions?
So moved.
Okay, who was that?
Second.
This is Dr. Kasuga.
Kasuga made the motion.
Nystrom second.
This is Rogers.
Okay, or Rogers. Anyway, okay. Any other comments? Can we open to public comment, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And it looks like we do have one individual who has requested comment, Melody Schrafer. Melody, I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. I'm chair of the KPIC board, so I just want to suggest that if this person had an internship site that she thought was KPIC and then she decided or found out it wasn't, that wouldn't make sense because to be at a KPIC site, you have to go through a process of applying through KPIC and going through an electronic match. So if she, it may behoove the board to ask her to give the documentation of how she originally thought it was a KPIC internship and what the process was by which she applied, or send something to the KPIC director to look into the matter for you. It just seems a little odd, more than a little odd. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Schaefer. Any other public comment?
This is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right. The Q&A panel is now closed.
Any other board comments? I see no hands raised or microphones open. Ms. Proto, could you please call for the vote?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harpsheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Riscate.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the licensing report. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there with me and the rest of our committee and helping us to get through this very thoughtfully.
Nice job, Dr. Harpsheets.
Thank you.
Dr. Harpsheets,
Yes.
this is Dr. Kasuga. If I
Yes.
can say something, I have a question, and I know that there wasn't a room for like questions for item 8A earlier.
Mhm.
So is it possible to just like ask Ms. Chong if we have information of when the stakeholder meeting that's going to be put on hold, if there's any idea of when it might be revisited?
Yes, please, Ms. Chung, could you please give that information to Dr. Kasuga if you have any information on that?
Hi, Dr. Suga. I currently don't have information at hand right now, but let me find out and I will provide with you any updates that I gather.
And I can piggyback on that. This is Antoinette. I think right now our focus is really because we have, the skeleton crew and licensing, just trying to get through applications and trying to work through the timeframes that were extended when we eliminated the 2 retired annuitants from processing applications. So just trying to manage the workload and getting applications processed, our focus has been shifted really to that. But once we are in person again and we have the infrastructure in place where we can focus on those 2 projects that have been put on hold, then we can have a better idea of a time frame of when we can engage in those 2 projects again.
Thank you for that information, and I apologize for going back to that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Fu, back to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to take up item 10. We are going to save the Ledge Affairs report for tomorrow, but I understand that there are stakeholders for item 10 here today, and I wanted to make sure we get to that out of respect for stakeholders. After item 10, we will take a break and then go into closed session after that for the remainder of the day. So if you are here for items 9, 11, 12, and 13, those are items that will be held over for tomorrow's discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ms. Sorek, for item number 10.
Thank you. I'd also want to be sensitive to the fact that we have, I believe, we have some of our stakeholders connected to the child custody issue, as well as we have our legislative staff person from Senator Pan's office on the line. So I want to be sensitive to our stakeholders on the line and what their availability is for tomorrow. So I don't know, Mr. Fu, if you wanted to kind of reach out to the members of the public about availability for tomorrow so that we could have, those discussions.
So we can be flexible on going into closed session then. So sorry, I apologize. I wasn't aware that was the case. So for item, I'm assuming with regard to Dr. Pan's office, this is with regard to item number 9. Ms. Sorek?
Yes, I was just finding my mute button.
What sub item of number 9?
This is item 9A1.
All right. So to just make sure that we are attentive to guests who've joined us for that. Sorry, Ms. Cervantes, I'm going to turn it over to you to just take up item 9A1 so that we can have the conversation with the appropriate stakeholders. The remainder of the items for number 9 will be taken up tomorrow, and then we will head to the enforcement report after that, and then we'll go into closed session. So apologies about the confusion. Ms. Cervantes.
Okay. You know, if it's helpful, 9A is really the big item of my report, and then the other items will probably only take a few minutes so we can have closure on the whole item number 9. But let's just get started and see how it goes.
Yes.
Okay, so so the legislative and regulatory affairs updates begin on page 93 of the combined packet. The first item we'll be discussing is item 9A1 regarding amendments to 2960 and 2960.1 of the Business and Professions Code regarding denial, suspension, and revocation acts of sexual contact. And just really briefly, by way of background, the impetus for this legislative change was to add inappropriate sexual behavior to statutory provisions requiring revocation. Examples of inappropriate behaviors that have emerged in disciplinary cases include kissing a client, touching or exposing oneself inappropriately, sending flirtatious, sexually suggestive, or sexually explicit text messages or emails to a client, buying romantic sexual gifts for a client. In April of 2018, a meeting of what was then the board's Policy and Advocacy Committee, now the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee, the members of the committee expressed support for a broader definition of sexual behavior. They noted that a violation could occur in a series or pattern of lesser behaviors and could change over time with advances in technology and communication mediums. In December of the same year, the committee held a teleconference stakeholder meeting to obtain input to possible changes to BPC section 2960.1. In February of 2019, the board approved language and Senator Richard Pan agreed to carry the bill, which became SB 275. In April of 2020, board staff was notified by the senator's office that the members were asked to reduce their bill load and he would not pursue SB 275 in the same form. Subsequently, the bill was amended to deal with pressing issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Within the last couple of weeks, staff learned that Senator Pan was willing to reintroduce this bill. The senator's office chose to introduce a spot bill, SB 401, as they want to provide the board an opportunity to reaffirm their support of the language. Because we are in a new legislative session, staff reviewed the last version of SB 275 against updated stakeholder, staff, and legal input, and has brought amended language before you today for consideration and discussion. You can find this statutory language in item 9A1 in the hand carry folder. At this time, I'd like to open this item for board discussion and then hear from members of the public and maybe our guests.
So, Mr. Vadas, I don't see any additional board discussion. I'm going to ask that Solid go ahead and identify the appropriate person from Dr. Pan's office Ms. Sorek, could you please provide the name for Dr. Pan's staff?
Yes, it is Faith Lee. And she may or may not, be prepared to discuss. She may just want to listen to the discussion today, but I just wanted to highlight that she is here from the office.
Sure. So if Solid could go ahead and promote Faith Lee from Senator Dr. Pan's office to a participant, and then we will ask if Ms. Lee has any comments at this time with regard to Ms. Cervantes' presentation.
This is a moderator. Unfortunately, I cannot promote her, but I can unmute her microphone. So I'll be unmuting her microphone now.
Great.
If you just muted yourself. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Just hi, everyone. This is Faith from Senator Pan's office. Thank you so much for the opportunity to briefly speak. I honestly, like Ms. Sorek said, I do not have any particular comment, but really just wanting to be here and listen to any comments from the board and any stakeholders' feedback. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Faith.
Yes, thank you, Marcella.
All right, Ms. Cervantes, I believe you said you wanted public comment since there isn't board discussion. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I'll turn it over back to you, Ms. Cervantes.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. It looks like we do have an individual who has requested public comment, Elizabeth Winkleman. Elizabeth, I'll be unmuting your microphone now.
Thanks. Hi, it's Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman again with California Psychological Association. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide some comment on this item. I guess my first I wanted to have a question, then I had a comment. The question is, in the hand carry item, there was one word that was going to be changed from shall to may based on, I thought, previous discussions that is still shall. And I guess I'll just finish my comment and then the board can discuss the language of shall or may. And that is, CPA does not have a official position on this bill yet, but some concerns have been raised about the two areas. One is that this is potentially not a necessary change in that people can already have their license revoked for sexual behavior under current law. And also that it may be that, certainly there are people that do need to have their licenses revoked for sexual behavior, but that that having it become an automatic revocation may be overly harsh in some circumstances, and that there may be some gray areas or some violations that may be open to rehabilitation. And in those severe and egregious cases, as I mentioned, they could already be revoked under current law.
Are there further public comments?
This is the moderator. Looks like there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Yeah. This is Will McGuire on Board Counsel. I was going to just speak to this for the board's information as well to maybe answer the public comment / question, because I know, as she referenced, we did have some discussions with CPA regarding this language. We've been working on it internally as well and trying to just find the right balance in this proposal between what, giving the board its authority that we feel it explicitly lacks to revoke in the case of an act of sexual behavior, which is the language we're adding, and then defining in 2960 that says that, unprofessional conduct shall include, among other things, an act of sexual behavior, and the board may revoke in the case of sexual behavior. However, as to the may and shall distinction that's maintained right now, contrary to our previous discussions, in Business and Professions Code 2960.1, after further discussion, following our discussion with CPA, we determined that changing that to may rather than shall may have unintended consequences of, for example, folks who commit sexual abuse or have sexual relations with clients or commit other sexual misconduct, in that case may avoid having their license revoked if we change it to may. As kind of a compromise between those two positions, for 2960.1, you'll notice we did not add the word sexual behavior into that definition. So the way that the kind of legality of it works is under 2960, you may be revoked for sexual behavior. However, under the mandatory revocation and contained in 2960.1, that does not include sexual behavior. It includes sexual abuse, sexual relations, and sexual misconduct, which are all defined elsewhere. So for the specific new term that we're creating and defining sexual behavior in 2960, the board still may revoke someone's license for that. Also, they may exercise their discretion not to revoke someone's license for that. So I hope that clears up the discrepancy, and I'm happy to answer any further questions from board members on that.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Fu, do you have a question, comment?
I do. Thanks so much, Ms. Cervantes. I actually have a few questions for either Mr. McGuire or Ms. Sorick. So my first question is, with regard to the purpose of this bill, the board identified what are known as, quote, grooming behaviors in existing past cases as the reason for the introduction of, or the consideration of this language. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's my understanding.
So what was what is the language here, or as well as last year, is a product of existing disciplinary cases where the board did not have the ability to appropriately protect consumers given existing statute. Is that correct?
I would just kind of clarify that the board did not feel that it had explicit statutory authority to seek revocation where they felt that that was the appropriate discipline. And I will defer to Will if that encapsulated our discussion last week.
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed. I wasn't there at the time when these discussions initially took place, but my understanding is that, yes, as you said, President Fu, that in the past, the board has thought that revocation was appropriate, but the behavior in question did not rise to the level of one of the explicitly described behaviors that requires or even permits revocation.
Understood. So to ask differently, what is considered here isn't from a hypothetical scenario. This is from existing disciplinary cases. Or great. So this is not hypothetical. This is based on real life experience.
Correct.
My final question with regard to the clarification that Ms. Sorick provided with regard to explicit statutory authority. Ms. Sorick, could you speak more to that that point, and what effects on with regard to the protection of consumers that has left the board without that explicit statutory authority?
You know, actually the board member who speaks most clearly on the need for this, because it has come up in closed session in the past, and really the impetus behind this statutory change came from as you mentioned, Mr. Fu, recent cases where the board did not feel like sexual behavior was called out enough in the statute, where the board felt like it had the ability to ask for more stringent discipline where those behaviors were so egregious. I would defer to Dr. Phillips, who I feel like has a more clear connection with the need for seeking some statutory change for this.
Sorry, I cut myself off. I think we may need to noodle with this language a little bit more, because I don't know now that it is very clear to me that the first section, 2960, actually suggests the possibility of revocation in a way that's going to be meaningful when we go through disciplinary proceedings. So I will put that issue to the side for a second. We can do some noodling with it. But here's basically what happened. We had people engaging in some really egregious sexual behavior, which did not involve sexual contact. In the cases we were able to bring to discipline, the Attorney General's office advised us that based on our statutory, based on the statutes as written, that they could not plead it as sexual contact, obviously. And so what we were left with was the Attorney General's office pleading it as boundary violations. ALJs, administrative law judges, will not give you the possibility of revocation. So we ended up with cases in which people had engaged in outrageous behavior with their patients or clients, and yet all they were getting was probation. And they'd clearly so far crossed boundary lines that it was more than just a simple boundary violation. So based on the frustration we had with what was the actual results of bringing disciplinary cases based on those factual situations, led us to start to think about how to revise the statute and seek a sponsor. And Senator Pan's office has been wonderful about this. I'm never sure whether to call him Senator Pan or Dr. Senator Pan. But in any event, I think we've seen a need. We've seen the limitations of how we've attempted to prosecute or to bring these types of disciplinary cases up until now. We felt there was a need to make it more explicit that this type of sexual behavior could lead to revocation. And so that is what has led to the impetus. We actually brought the legislation originally through where it was actually mandatory revocation. It made it all the way through the Senate Business Professions and a whole bunch of other stuff committee. It made it through the Senate floor, but it stalled in the Assembly for reasons perhaps unrelated to the content of the bill. I think that's the kindest way to put it. So we now find ourselves in a position where Senator Pan has indicated some willingness to consider taking this bill up again. There have been concerns raised that we wanted to address, particularly concerns that were raised by the California Professional Association. And so there's been a little bit of noodling with it, but the basic idea, essential idea is we cannot have licensees running around and engaging in behavior. I mean, you could literally masturbate in front of your client and it would not be considered a sexual contact offense. So you would not get mandatory revocation. That would be considered a boundary violation, surprisingly enough, based on the way that things get pled now. So we wanted to be able to encompass those behaviors that people were engaging in digitally, that were very clearly across the line, sending provocative pictures to patients, writing sexual texts to patients, writing romantic notes to patients. I mean, just in a slew of very bizarre behavior, largely engaged with by a very limited group of psychologists within the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, which were winnowed out very quickly by the department. And a lot of older men that apparently are lonely and we're going to use their practice to prey on their clients or patients. So that being the case, we felt that there was a need for action, and that's really been the impetus behind what we're doing. I'm still not entirely sure, and maybe Mr. McGuire can address himself to this, how 2960 will point an administrative law judge in the direction that they may revoke, depending on the gravity of the behavior.
Before Mr. McGuire answers your question, Dr. Phillips, I have one additional question for you with regard with what you just said. So based on your experience as enforcement chair and having seen these cases, are California consumers in danger now without this explicit statutory authority?
Yes. Period. Yes, they are. And our hands have been tied.
Thank you.
It's been very frustrating for the enforcement staff and for board members that have had to vote on these types of cases, that the more serious forms of discipline were not available to us. There is an instance, and I will just say this for purposes of completeness, there are instances where these things would come to us, and we could technically, even though the administrative law judge had not done so, we could rewrite the opinion, we could reject the opinion and then go through the process and eventually rewrite the opinion for revocation. Unfortunately, what we've been informed is by our counsel is that these are not going to be, in all likelihood, defensible rewrites based on the existing statutory law. And it really required us to have more specific enactment in order for us to defensively revoke given sexual behavior.
Dr. Phillips, as a result of your loquaciousness, I now have an additional question for you.
Damn, I should have shut up.
So with what you just said, so just to be clear, this is without explicit statutory authority, California consumers are in danger. And if we are to rewrite an opinion because of a boundary violation, a person is still able to practice with a free and clear license without this. Is that accurate based on what you just shared?
That's correct. And they still have the opportunities to engage in this kind of behavior with other clients or patients.
Thank you.
This is Will. Will McGuire, board counsel, and I'd like to address Dr. Phillips' question. And I'm we're open to suggestion on specific edits. Seeing as there's a spot bill, I think it would behoove the board to get the language as close to satisfactory today as they can, and approve for staff to continue working with the senator's office and other legislative staff to bring this into existence if the board is comfortable with it. But so to answer the specific question, looking at 2960, I know this isn't even close to the entirety of 2960, but we put we've got the ellipsis in there. So I think the relevant parts are here on page 42 of the materials, the hand carry materials. I'll kind of cut out the words that don't apply here. So the board may, skipping down to the next line, revoke the registration or license of any registrant or licensee if the applicant, registrant or licensee, has been guilty of unprofessional conduct. Okay, unprofessional conduct shall include but not be limited to, among many other things. You get down to O, and then the existing language is obviously not underlined, and the additional language is underlined that we've added. And so we've added any act of sexual behavior to that list. So looking back up, it's a may revoke here. We did not add, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we did not add this sexual behavior to 2960.1, which describes mandatory revocation. That was kind of a compromise based on the totality of the circumstances in our discussions with CPA. If the board wishes to put it back in there in the mandatory area, that's their prerogative to do so.
I would suggest that we add an additional sentence to say it may be revoked based on that. And here's my logic.
Where, Dr. Phillips?
I would put it in 2960.1, I suspect. I think we could add an additional sentence that said that sexual behavior may result in the revocation of a license, or sexual behavior is defined in above, whatever. Here's the problem. We're adding it to the laundry list of unprofessional behavior. That puts us in the same area as boundary violations. So, yeah, they could revoke based on this, but there's a whole laundry list of things that they never revoke based on. I think we need to be more explicit about the potential consequences of this. Based on the concerns expressed by stakeholders, I do understand that it would be better to have the flexibility of may revoke as opposed to shall revoke. But yeah, you may revoke also for having multiple relationships, but it never happens. And that's also in the list of unprofessional conduct. So I think we've, in effect, kind of neutered us in terms of our intention of making the fact that revocation under these circumstances is on the table in a much more clear and explicit way for the judges, for the Attorney General's office, for the board's benefit, for the benefit of consumers. It has to be made explicit. It can't be just kind of like dumped in with a whole bunch of other stuff. In my mind, that's my thought. Because, yeah, you may revoke based on lots of things, but they rarely ever do. For sexual contact, they often do revoke, in fact, are mandated to revoke if they find that. We were trying to give some flexibility as to sexual behavior in terms of the gravity of the particular sexual behavior engaged in. But I don't think we're being clear anymore. So I would suggest that something's got to be noodled with in order to make this clear. Does that make sense?
This is Will. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I think it may be easier to work offline with you. But I guess I'd be wondered what other board members think if that's the will of the board. Like I mentioned, you could kind of there could be a motion to approve a sort of a concept, and then to delegate to staff to continue working on the precise language. Since this is obviously going to the legislature and will be noodled with, to use your term, Dr. Phillips, there quite a bit, I'm sure.
So
but we should.
We make motion to delegate to the executive officer the authority to present language to Senator Pan's office for, or if we make that motion, does that require that we approve the language?
I think it does not require that you approve the specific language. It's kind of what I was getting at. But I'm just curious. I'd like to get the will of the board before we go forward with that, so I know that we're not just off in the wrong direction. But so maybe just a little board discussion from other folks. Do we think? I guess to frame the discussion, there's a lot of different terms that we tried to clean up in here, but we have the terms sexual abuse, sexual behavior, sexual relations, sexual misconduct, and sexual contact. Now, we've deleted sexual contact because it's unclear to me what that even is as compared, and the other ones are much more descriptive, the other four. I guess the board should kind of tell us which ones is it you want to give flexibility to, and which ones is it you want to be a hard and fast rule of revocation.
I have another question, Mr. McGuire. Is sexual contact explicitly defined?
Not in this context. It may be in the penal code, which we would have to. Yeah, it is defined. 728. It's defined of the BMP code. And if you look at that, I think the reason we deleted that is because it doesn't cover enough. Let me pull it up. It's yeah. Now I recall why we deleted that reference to section 728 because it was. I thought not encompassing enough, whereas our new term of sexual behavior is. I can read it to you. Sorry. So sexual contact under 728 means the touching of an intimate part of another person.
And it
So
specifies like genitals and breasts and.
it, then that's where the cross-reference to the penal code comes in. So it says intimate part and touching have the same meaning as defined in section 243.4 of the penal code. So that may be the case, but just to make it cleaner and more encompassing, and 728 is specific to talking about a brochure that needs to be provided from a psychotherapist. So, and those definitions apply just within that section. And then obviously where cross-referenced here in the old version of 2960.1.
So are the terms sexual abuse, sexual relations, and sexual misconduct, do they have a specific meaning? Are they specifically defined somewhere?
Abuse, I think relations is fairly self-explanatory, but maybe it also needs to be defined. We hadn't gone so far in this revision to do that, but certainly we can, when we go back and work on this, probably outside of this meeting.
I think the advantage of this was that sexual contact had an explicit definition. We also found that explicit definition to be limiting.
To be what?
To be limiting, because it was only certain kinds of touching, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
However, these terms to me seem ambiguous. Unless we give specific definitions for them. So
you're right, and we have for our new term that we've added, sexual behavior. I noticed sexual contact does not appear up in 2960, so I thought that was kind of incongruous. That it's not unprofessional behavior, but it's something that can be mandatorily you lose your license for, even though it's not.
Well, it is unprofessional behavior, but I think they've taken a certain subset of unprofessional behavior and made a stronger statement, or a certain type of unprofessional behavior, and made the statement that much stronger. So I think the language as rewritten, with all due respect, it makes some things more ambiguous and it makes other things not clear in terms of what the recommended penalty would be for it, or what penalty should be considered given a certain kind of violation, a certain kinds of discipline that should be necessary under those circumstances. So I think how would you like to handle this, Ms. Thorick?
I would recommend that maybe for the discussion purposes, for timing, I think it would be best for the board to have as much agreement as possible on language, giving staff the flexibility to make minor tweaks that the senator might change, not to the substance of what you guys are looking for, but technical changes to the language that we could have the ability to work with the senator's staff on. I don't know if it is something the board would consider perhaps making a motion on the language, and then in discussion we can make tweaks to the language based on concerns that you brought, Dr. Phillips. I do have some suggested language for 2960.1 that I could float out for consideration.
Okay.
But that's just my 2 cents.
I wonder, I'm just thinking about the time and process and getting to agreement. I wonder if we need to kind of to talk about those areas that we agree about and just kind of funnel them down so that the adjustments to language, there's flexibility for that as this progresses, rather than trying to fine tune it here and it's too specific and then isn't workable in the process, in the legislative process.
Here's what I would suggest, and if the board feels comfortable with it.
Dr. Phillips, hold on. Dr. Kasuga has been waiting a long time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Like, a really long time, and I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Mr. Fu and Dr. Phillips. Ms. Cervantes, I am wondering if there's also a possibility that we can look at this further during our upcoming Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee meeting, where Dr. Phillips is also a part of, and that's a possibility if we have time to work through the specific language, and if the whole board would be amenable to delegating that to the committee, or whether you prefer to have this discussion with the full board included.
Dr. Kasuga, I believe we're limited by deadlines in the legislature with regard to spot bills. So spot bills have to be, substantive language has to be introduced in spot bills by a certain deadline. And I think by the time the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee considers that, we will be out of deadline. So that's not going to be, from a timeline perspective, possible in the legislature. What I am going to suggest here is I'm happy to make a motion along the lines of what Ms. Cervantes and Ms. Sorick described, which is to adopt the concept, and I believe Mr. McGuire also suggested this as well, is to adopt the concept in the language presented before us, and to delegate to Dr. Phillips as chair of the Enforcement Committee and member of the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee to iron out the languages and to work with Ms. Sorick and Dr. Pan's office, if he's amenable, on the final substantive language of the bill.
I'll second that motion.
I am sorry, Mina.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips, were you going to say something?
I said I am totally amenable to that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
Ms. Cervantes, would you like to turn to public comment based on the motion on the table before us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that correction, Mr. Fu. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank interest from Senator Pan's office to take this on for this legislative session. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Dr. Winkleman, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
I wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to comment. I think the specifics of this language are going to be very important to how our CPA board is going to what position that they will take. And a couple of points, I agree with Dr. Phillips that it's a problem potentially to have many undefined terms that would result in an automatic revocation of somebody's license. I mean, it's extremely severe, and people need to know exactly it needs to be really clear what would be triggering an automatic revocation. I also want to mention it's very awkward. Of course, people who are engaging in egregious, inappropriate sexual behavior should lose their license. What we are concerned about is the potential that some of the language isn't that clear and could wind up in revocation for somebody who really didn't do something that might have had an error of judgment, but not done something so egregious they should lose their license. For example, recently one of our members, there was a complaint against him actually to an employer, but could have easily gone to the board, where he had asked a young woman who was his patient about sexual issues in her relationship when her relationship was part of the issues that were bringing her into treatment. And this young adult patient was extremely upset about that question. So to her, she perceived that as inappropriate sexual communication, which would come under the definition of sexual behavior. So, you know, maybe his judgment of that was not great, but it wouldn't be something that would be really egregious or necessarily deserve to have a license revocation. So I just wanted to mention that's why we're concerned, not that people who really engage in horrible and egregious behavior wouldn't get their license revoked. So I had one suggestion that you might want to consider in terms of keeping the more clarity is for 2960.1. If you went back to the original language, which included automatic revocation for sexual contact, which is clearly defined, but then added that there another sentence saying that there may be a revocation for sexual behavior. So to kind of highlight the fact that it is possible and take that sexual behavior out of the long list of other areas of unprofessional conduct. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Yes, we'll be moving on to our next individual's requested public comment. Dr. Belgrad, I'll be unmuting your microphone now.
Yes, hi, thank you. This is Dr. Belgrad from CDCR, and I just wanted to speak really briefly on the topic of sexting that we were talking about earlier and how it's not defined. And I agree with everybody who's commented on this, that this type of behavior is completely unprofessional and egregious, and that sexting should be operationalized somewhere in the code so it's defined and people know what it is. And then after that, say your license may be revoked for that. So it's just clearly delineated in the code, and that it's not considered as something that's just unprofessional conduct and nobody does anything about it, like multiple relationships. It sounds much more serious. And if it's operationalized, it can clearly help anybody who is, just reading through the code or something to know, okay, you cannot do this. That is not acceptable, and this is the consequence if you sext a patient. So my comment is just saying operationalize the word sexting, because that's kind of a commonly used term these days. Everybody knows what it means, but make it clear in the code, and then say what the consequences are for that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was that the last comment? I can't tell.
Yes, this is the moderator. There are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Dr. Phillips, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to make any promises. I certainly feel like we can deliver to Dr. Pan a tightly written first draft of a bill, and I think we can do that. We can accomplish it in such a way that I also think the concerns expressed by Dr. Winkleman and others will be more than adequately addressed. I just think we need to rethink how we're presenting it, and I think it's going to be. I actually think it's going to be fairly easy to do. Now that I think about it, but I don't think we can do it now without being in closed session till 10 o'clock at night.
I think there's I'm gonna guess, just in the way that we've talked about this previously and the way that this discussion is going, that we do have some consensus about the concept. Ms. Nystrom?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to add that I'll be recusing myself from the vote since it's on legislation going to that's okay.
Okay, thank you. So our motion by Mr. Fu was, Mr. Fu, help me out. We said.
Sure. It's to approve the motion is to approve the concept encompassed in the language provided in this item to delegate to Dr. Phillips and the executive officer to work on language to submit to Senator Pan's office for consideration.
And it was, thank you. And the motion was second by
Dr. Phillips.
By Dr. Phillips. And so that's what we have before us. Ms. Petro, if you can, if there's no further board discussion, can we call for a vote?
Kasuka?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Sorry, aye.
Nystrom was recused. Phillips?
Aye.
Rescate?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
So it looks like our motion passed.
Excuse me.
So we'll move this forward, and Dr. Phillips and Ms. Sorick have some guidance based on our discussion today about where to make adjustments.
Ms. Cervantes, just for a point of clarification on timing, since we have Ms. Lee on the line, and I want to make sure and schedule, a phone call to go through the language with Dr. Phillips and staff, and I want to get her that language, but I just want to make sure I know from her when she would need that by so that I can schedule accordingly.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sorick. Can she talk to us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The deadline is, I just don't want to, it's going to be March 10th to submit any amendments to SPOT bills.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then thank you everybody. So we are going to leave item 982 and 3 for tomorrow's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cervantes, and we're also going to take up the remainder of items in item 9 tomorrow as well. So one of the things we wanted to get to was the enforcement report because we understood there were stakeholders here, and so I just want to be able to turn it over to Ms. Sorick for the enforcement report. I also just want to bring up that tomorrow we will also have the enforcement committee report, which will be another opportunity for interested stakeholders to make public comment. We certainly welcome comments on both this item, enforcement report, as well as comments for tomorrow for the enforcement committee. So with that being said, Ms. Sorick.
Thank you. And Ms. Monterrubio had to be called out for an issue and is not available for the report, but there will be time tomorrow for her to provide any clarification on items that we may not have been able to cover today. So I just want to call attention to agenda item 10 in your meeting packet, which starts on page 97 in the combined materials. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking to fill the office technician position, which does complaint intake. And then we also have an associate government program analyst who was on military leave and is returning later this month. So we are excited to have him back on board. And included in your media materials is the overview of enforcement activity. And this is a report that we provide to the board at the quarterly meetings. This is our way of tracking the number of complaints we receive and how that translates to actual accusations that are filed, and then the disciplinary actions that are ultimately taken by the board. We have categories of violation types, so you can see the most common types of complaints that we receive. And then we also included in the media materials the performance measures, which shows the case violations, the number of days, and the case aging, and our targets that we've set aside for meeting our turnover criteria, and when we do and do not meet those target areas. So you can see those metrics clearly in the performance measures. And that's a performance measures indicator that's collected through the BREEZE licensing and enforcement system, and it's pulled out by the Department of Consumer Affairs. So I am happy to, I may not be able to answer specific questions related to this, but I do have Mr. Burke also on the line, who prior to his experience with the Board of Psychology was also in the enforcement unit at Board of Behavioral Sciences, and can also speak to some of these areas if it's a question that I cannot take. So that is the enforcement report.
Are there any questions from the board? I see Dr. Phillips, and then I have Ms. Nystrom next. So Dr. Phillips.
Sorry, I left my hand up.
It's all right. And I saw that Ms. Nystrom put her hand down as well. So, all right. So Dr. Rogers, please. Dr. Rogers? I believe you're muted and your hands are up. Is up. So just want to check in to see if you.
Sorry about that. I was talking and no one could hear me. My apologies.
We missed the last great American novel. So hopefully that will be tackled somewhere else. But over to you, Dr. Rogers.
Sure. I have a question about the table on page 99. Two sections. The first one is disciplinary decisions for the year 2020 and 2021. At the bottom where it says total disciplinary decisions, it says 13, but by my calculations, I think that should be 26. Is that correct? I think it's just maybe an oversight.
That does appear to be an oversight.
Okay. And then there's a second one on the same page under other decisions, I think for 2020 and 2021 also. The total says 0 and that should be 3.
Yes, I see that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. All right, seeing no further board discussion, I'm going to turn this over to Madam Moderator to open public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
That would be great. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Great, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, so thank you so much, folks, for bearing with us. I'm glad that we were able to hit items 9A1 and items 10 when we knew that there were stakeholders interested in this discussion here. So, but I do want to say that for those folks who may have missed this item 10, that some of this may be related to the Enforcement Committee meeting tomorrow, report committee meeting tomorrow. So with that, what we're going to do is we are going to go into closed session for the remainder of the day. We are not coming back out of closed session for the rest of today. And we are going into closed session for the purposes of Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision C3, to discuss disciplinary matters, including proposed decisions, stipulations, petitions for reinstatement or modification of penalty, petitions for reconsideration, and remands. So we are going to close session. I'm also going to say that tomorrow morning, we will also enter closed session as well to finish up any remaining items. So just stay tuned for tomorrow morning. We will start the day in closed session. And we hope to be back out by, well, I'm not going to say a time because one never knows. So please log in and check in to see if we are in open session when you can. So we will be in closed session unless Ms. Sorek, you have a better sense for tomorrow, what time we'll be out of closed session.
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. Great.
President Fu, this is Board Counsel Will McGuire. I was just going to add, or to clarify a little bit. I think what we're going to do in solid, the moderator can correct me if I'm wrong, but for tomorrow at 9 a.m. we will, it says here, we'll call to order and establish the quorum and then go to closed session. The thing we don't know is how long that closed session will last, but I think by tomorrow morning, we will have a good sense of how long it will last. So likely we'll be able to update the world and let them know whether we're going to be in closed session for an hour or 2 hours, and we'll put that post that information on the meeting. So the meeting itself will start, so everyone should log in at 9 a.m. just to kind of get the latest schedule update.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Mr. McGuire, for that clarification. So, just to for clarification. With that being said, board members and all interested parties, we will be logging in at 9 o'clock onto this WebEx platform. It's a different link. Please check the agenda for a call to order, and then we'll be heading into closed session at that point again, and I'll state the reasons why tomorrow morning when we do. So board members, you received a closed session phone number, but I'm wondering if we want to actually just hand over controls of the WebEx to the right folks here. I'm going to ask either Mr. Glassberg or Ms. Sorek, what's the preferred method?
Hello, this is Jason. WebEx for today, and it'll be closed session phone number for tomorrow morning.
Got it. All right. So for our solid team, could you please go ahead and secure the WebEx room for board members and staff? Thank you all for participating. Just love the public comment section discussion today. Really appreciated the participation there. Solid will secure the WebEx room. Board members, please stay online. And then Solid will then turn over controls over to the closed session staff.
All right, this is the moderator. I have locked the meeting. I will go ahead and start expelling all our attendees. I will also double check that we have all of our board members still on the line before I pass over the host role. So one moment. For those of the staff members who are in the panelist role, if you do not need to be in the meeting, if you could please log off, that would be great.
And while our fantastic partners at Solid secure the virtual room, board members know that we are on break until 4 p.m. So please feel free to nourish yourself.